It's time for Operation Freedom with your host, Dr. Dave Janda, on Southeast Michigan's conservative powerhouse, WAAM Talk 1600.
Thanks for tuning in, folks, and welcome back to WAAM Talk 1600's Operating Theater. It's the only OR in all talk radio. I'm Dr. Dave Janda, broadcasting from WAAM Talk 1600's Freedom Bunker. We're hidden deep, deep inside the People's Republic of Ann Arbor, and we're here every Sunday for you from 2 to 5 Eastern, but it doesn't start and stop on Sundays from 2 to 5. We are on call for you 24/7 at the following locations. Our YouTube channel, also named Operation Freedom, where we put up a couple new YouTubes, usually Tuesday, 8 a.m., Friday, 8 a.m. We do that every week. Information, the bought-off lamestream fake media will not touch. We're also available 24/7 at Janda.1. We have a new server there. The speed of downloads, I challenge you to find a faster website. Our IT team, led by Nick Ruiz, has done a phenomenal job. We have a free public side where we upload information on a regular basis, but where the real meat is on the subscription side. The biggest bang for the buck, I believe, in all the internet, $9 a month, where we do the extra shows. You have access to all of our archives for the radio show, for our WTF geopolitical show that we upload every Wednesday, to our Insider Insight interview show where we bring someone forward to discuss issues that a bought-off lamestream fake media will not touch, to our Department of Advanced Research show, to our healthcare policy series, to our nutritional series with Dr. Peter Glidden, to our experts, our contributing experts section, all available at DaveJanna.com. Try it for a month. If you don't like it, get rid of it. Not sure why. Because the information you will not get from the lamestream media. Folks, bottom line, every week in our operating room, with this show, with the YouTube channel, with the website, we dissect current events that are impacting you, your family, your business, our community, and our country. And we bring to our operating room information and guests the lamestream media either ignores because it doesn't fit into their preconceived, politically correct, bought-off agenda. Because, folks, they're petrified. They're petrified of what might happen if they actually tell you what you need to know. This show is about your freedom, your political, your economic, your financial, and your health care freedom. A chunk of this show today, we are going to focus on what's happening economically and financially. And the reason is because the spin that the fake media has been perpetuating is that everything is fine in the world economy, in the North American economy, that everything turned out perfectly this past Friday on Black Friday. There were huge crowds at stores and the like. And the economy is humming along and the consumer is in fine shape. Folks, as much as I'd like that to be the case, I believe the data that the lamestream media will not tell you is telling us something contrary to that point. Now, what I do with this show, the YouTube channel, and the website is I bring you experts, not people that have an interest in something, but experts in each one of the categories we delve into. My first guest is someone who is truly an expert when it comes to your financial and economic freedom. Her name de plume is TraderStef. Beginning in 1996, TraderStef initiated a career spanning 14 years within the New York City investment banking industry, so-called, if you will, folks, the belly of the financial beast. Steph acquired a diverse skill set in human resourcing, technology and communication, training, education and development, business analysis, and global risk. She began investing in precious metals actually in 1999 while following market trends post-dot-com bubble and 9/11. She then left the banking industry in 2009 after 5 years in global risk management at Citigroup. Steph has developed and hosted on a number of different platforms. She has her own website. She has her own blog post. She writes for a number of different platforms. She does an incredible service to anyone willing to open their minds, open their eyes, and open their ears. Because she tells you what you need to know, and it's not what the bought-off lamestream fake media, which is a tentacle of the deep state, wants you to hear. It's my honor to welcome back TraderStef. Steph, welcome back to Operation Freedom.
Hey, Dr. Janda, thank you for the kind words. How are you?
I'm well. Dave's a little hoarse. He went to the Michigan-Ohio State game, and it didn't turn out very well for us Michigan fans. Congratulations yet again. Oh, this is really difficult for me, Steph. They have won 16 of the last 19 years. I think 8 out of the last 9 games. But anyway, Dave was there yelling, so Dave's voice isn't very good today. But Steph, speaking about not very good. I was watching. I do this as a service to our listeners. I watch the bought-off lamestream fake media to get a hint of what the propaganda du jour is, or du jour week, if you want to say. And they have been pushing this narrative that everything's fine in the world economy, in the North American economy, in the U.S. economy. They were pushing the narrative on Black Friday, this past Friday, that everything was great. Everything was great at the malls. Everything was great at the stores. But in fact, Steph, I think you have a little bit of a deeper dissection of what's really going on. So let's talk about some issues that you've written about. And let's first delve into what happened on Black Friday.
Yeah, that's a good question. And, mind you, we still have the holiday season in front of us. We have Cyber Monday, and then we have another big 7 shopping days after that. So the numbers are not completely in. But as far as Black Friday was concerned, we're seeing some numbers pushed out there. But before I throw those numbers out there to everyone, I want to mention an article that I had written in November 24th. It's called, "If Debt Bullied by Santa Claus, Forget About It and Visit Dyker Heights." I think everyone knows there's always a neighborhood in your state or wherever you live that is just incredibly decorated with beautiful Christmas lights. I encourage you to go visit one in your neighborhood if you hadn't got a chance to see one yet. And I hope you don't have to travel too far, but it always kind of relieves the holiday blues if you ever experience that. But, speaking of blues, back like just a few weeks ago, some of the hard data that came out before Black Friday with regards to the economy was not looking too happy. So, for instance, the Bloomberg's Consumer Comfort Index came in pretty low. And when you draw a line horizontally backwards, we are where we were in the midst of the great financial crisis.
Ooh. Yeah, we haven't seen that on Fox Business News. Drew would find talking about that, or CNBS as I call it.
Yeah, so, are consumers currently keeping the economy out of recession? You bet. You think it's going to stay that way? Probably not. What that time frame is, I don't know. But if you look at some of, you can Google it, it's out there for everybody to see. Just Google Black Friday bust, and you'll get a couple of articles that will come up. And you're going to see the videos, and I'm going to point out 2 examples. One is Las Vegas, and we all know malls are not the way they used to be. But holidays and Black Fridays, the big malls that have still survived are usually packed. Mm-hmm. Overnight, you got these videos of huge hordes of people trying to rush into buildings on these great sales. I'm not seeing them this year. What I'm seeing is vacant. And I don't mean vacant stores, but vacant walkways, like nobody's there. Now, granted, this is it can be a local phenomenon, but that doesn't change the fact that these places that used to be, even last year, for people who live in the area and were interviewed, said, this is very unusual. They've never seen this before. So there's something going on that doesn't explain it all, and I'll get to that in a minute. But online shopping is not replacing that hole. So if we look at the consumer credit and how much, they've been charging up, the consumer credit and balance composition of how much debt that they've got, we are beyond what it was during the great financial crisis. So once again, another data point that kind of, hits right at home and puts things into perspective. And it was just this past September that the consumer, their debt grew by $9.5 billion alone, just in September. So there's a slowdown also in charging on their credit cards and spending and borrowing, which started in September. So the question, it brings the question, folks are just probably maxed out, and they're maybe saving a little bit of ammunition for the holidays, or maybe not. And another report that came out, when you look at industrial production and you compare that to the consumer, industrial production is kind of falling through the floor a little bit. And some of that has to do with the trade war, but not completely. It's part of it, but it's not the big picture. Now, granted, retail sales overall are higher than they were, let's say, back in 2000. But if we take the numbers that they're touting out there about Black Friday was a record sale day, $7.4 billion or $7.6 billion, depending on where you look. But the issue is the brick and mortar stores and why so many places are empty. So here's my best guess. It's probably going to flatten out or be less than what they're expecting. And that's the same thing that has happened over the last few years, where you get the hype as we're going into it, buy the rumor, sell the news kind of situation. But people have to keep in mind that as of this past week, online sales only consist of 10% of total retail sales throughout the whole year. So there's still another 90% of sales that are primarily brick and mortar focused. And we're not talking department and grocery stores, because about 50% of those retail shopping numbers actually have to do with gas stations and that kind of thing, grocery stores, things that are happening where people need things. It's not necessarily going out and shopping for things that you don't really need. You're going to shopping for things that you want. So this holiday season, there's something brewing under the surface here, and that kind of leads into the gold story today, because I rewatched Margin Call, which is a great movie from 2011. And my listeners out there, if you haven't seen it yet, go get it, watch it. That actually happened, and the rumor is that it was Lehman Brothers Bank that was depicted, but on good authority, it was probably Goldman Sachs, because the bank that was based on is still in business today, and Lehman Brothers isn't. So definitely go ahead and check Margin Call. So my hairs are standing up on the back of my neck. What about you? There's something going on, Dave.
No, and so here's the problem, Steph. When I talk about something going on that the bought-off lamestream fake media is not reporting, I'm accused of peddling fear porn, that everything's fine, that everything is going well. And in fact, if that were the case, Steph, and let's talk about what you've put forward as it relates to what's happening in the gold market. There are some things happening in the gold market that the bought-off lamestream fake media will never touch, will never present. Educate our listeners on, and you are an aficionado when it comes to dissecting markets and looking at what's happening underneath the hood. When you look at the precious metals markets, gold, silver, to educate our listeners on what you're picking up, because you tend to pick up things well in advance of moves happening.
Sure. It reminds me, why I say that the hairs were standing up on the back of my neck earlier this week was that when I was walking through the halls and the corridors of investment banking and risk management in New York back in the day, things are looking kind of similar. I mean, it's not exactly the same. There's just a certain nuance to it that is exactly the same. And when gold, what the gold price was back then, it was much lower, and it went up substantially. It had a correction during the crisis, but in the end, after the financial crisis, well, not after, but when the Dow finally bottomed out, gold actually gained like 25 or 30%. It did. You actually made out by holding the gold through the small fall that went, which coincidentally was because of margin calls, because people needed cash in the stock market. They were getting margin calls, and gold was the go-to asset, and or silver, to generate that cash. But then when that little scenario played out over about 2-3 months, gold went back up. And that's why it beat out the Dow and the S&P and all that. And to this day, it still outperforms them both. But these news items that are coming out now are very interesting, because there was an article that just came out in the Financial Times, and it's duplicated in the Financial Review, where you can actually read the full article. And I wrote about this in something I published last night, and it's called "The Time is Close for Gold's Next Move," technical analysis. Now, I wasn't specifically clear about, hey, is it going up or is it going down? But I'll get to that. More than likely, it's going to go up. But the article that came out in the Financial Times was an opinion piece, and there were a few quotes in there, such as, "It's rather worrying that some investors and central bankers are talking up gold," unquote. Why should that be worrying? Because she based it on the term of gold bugs. You know, they're still calling people that invest in gold bugs. I like to call folks that invest in precious metals smart, savvy, and they're metalheads. They're not bugs. Goldman Sachs came out with the commodity index is where you want to be in 2020, which includes oil. And they're suggesting, taking positions in oil as well as buying gold. So they have a price point for gold next year for about $1,600 an ounce, but I think we're going to surpass that. But one of the better pieces that came out was about a bet. Now, as a lot of listeners may not know, things such as futures contracts, which are also placed in the stock market as well on stocks, not just gold, silver, and commodities and other assets. But there's these things called options. And one way to explain that is, imagine if you wanted to buy a house at a certain price. Say that house was $400,000, and you want to guarantee that 2 years from now that you're going to have the option to still buy that house at $400,000. But in order to make that happen, you want to put down a deposit, which you're going to lose, keep in mind, that you're going to get that same price 2 years out. Now, let's say 2 years out, the price of that house doubled for whatever reason. You made out pretty good because you were able to buy that house for 100% under market price. Now, that's something that's going on in gold right now, in the options market. And someone out there, it's not the first time this has happened. It doesn't always play out. The point is that I find the timing very interesting. So I'll just run the quote, and it was in a Bloomberg article. The gold options market saw a 1.75 million block trade betting on the precious metals could almost triple in more than a year, surpassing the old record. They're hoping for a quick, violent move, which is the most likely scenario. So let's talk about that. The numbers that they're throwing out there is about $4,000 an ounce, but we're talking about tripling that. I'm not saying 12,000, but it'll be somewhere beyond 4,000. So this person is betting that within 12 to 18 months, they want to be able to buy a gold ounce for $4,000 an ounce. They're not betting that they're going to buy it for more than what the market's going to be selling it for. Are you following me?
I am.
Yeah. That's interesting.
And you said this is an option that someone exercised. They put down $1.75 million.
Yeah, in block trades, and they paid $3.50 per ounce to be able to buy gold at $4,000 an ounce, which means they expect gold to be a lot higher than $4,000.
And Steph, in your experience, in your career, this is a huge bet. I mean, it's a bet, right? It's a huge
bet.
It's a huge bet.
Futures and options, it's all bet. It's gambling.
And in your investment banking experience, when you see a wager put of that magnitude in such a far out option, that's not a mom and pop operation putting that kind of money on the table for that kind of option, is it?
No, it's smart money. But look, Poland knows what time it is.
Well, yeah, let's hit that because right. So, what did Poland do over the past couple? That's been announced over the past week or so.
Well, there's this thing called repatriation, and it's been going on for several years now, where a lot of countries are demanding or asking to, hey, either London or New York or maybe Canada, depending on where you had your gold stored. And that reason may have been, as far back as World War II, when countries wanted to get the gold to a safe place and off their continent. They're asking for their gold back, and that's called repatriation. Well, Poland was one of the most recent ones, and they repatriated 100 tons out of the London vaults.
So 100 tons of gold moved from the vaults in London, where the Polish government was holding it, to Poland itself. In other words, it's interesting, right? So
yeah, well, here's what Poland said. Due to the significant increase in our gold resources and taking into account the practice of other central banks, very important there, the management board of the Central Bank of Poland decided to transfer half of the current gold reserves, roughly 100 tons, back home. We not only build economic strength of the Polish state, but also create reserves that will safeguard its financial security. Now, most recently, the Dutch have also expressed the same sentiment, whereas they're expecting that, hey, got to keep a lot of gold in your central banks, because when we have a financial reset or a currency reset, gold is going to back it by some degree, in some way, fashion, or form.
And prior to that, Germany was involved in repatriating their gold, correct?
I'm not familiar with the details of that story, I'm sorry, but I believe that they did, and there's a very long story, and it took them a couple of years to get that gold back. And there was a lot of conspiracy theories about why that was, but the bottom line is they got their gold back, and they got it back sooner than they expected.
So here's an interesting thing, and you've pointed this out before, Steph, when it comes to Poland. There's been all this information, if you will, in the lamestream media. Oh, Poland, they're the front line of another Russian invading a sovereign country. Yet Poland's taken its gold back. It seems like they're more leery of the bankers in London, right?
Yeah.
Than they are the Russians invading their country.
Yeah, and Jim Rickards stated that verbatim almost. He said the worldwide run on gold vaults continues. Poland pulls 100 tons of bullion from London. It means the Poles are more troubled by London bankers than Russian tanks, unquote.
But
so true.
But
There's an article I just wrote about the Polish gold, by the way. It's called A Polak's Message to the Central Banks.
Well, and in fact, it just shouldn't be the people of Poland who are more leery of the bankers in London. It should be every person of the world, correct?
That's right. And so if we look at gold, if we look at some of the numbers, and we look at this chart, we look at the weekly chart, if we go back to December 2015, when the low was 1,046, and the September high was 1,557, that was a $511 move. That's roughly a 50% gain. If we go just to August of 2018 up to September of 2019, that was a $400 run. That was a 35% gain. If we go to April, May, and June, just this recent summer up to September, that was a $288 run. That was 23%. We've only had a 6% correction. It's still in a bull market, and I think we're about to make a move, but there may be a little chop before then.
Steph, how can folks follow you? They need to follow you on a daily basis.
At TraderStef, that's TraderStef, like drinkers, on Twitter, or my website is TraderStef.wordpress.com. Thank you, Dr. Janda.
Steph, I'd like to thank you for everything you have done, are doing, and will do. You're a beacon of light when it comes to folks' economic and financial well-being and freedom. Folks, you're listening to Operation Freedom. I'm Dr. Dave Janda, broadcasting from our Freedom Bunker here at WAAM Talk 1600.